blah blah. Hare Krishna. Yeah, you have that actually bookmark there. Yeah, you keep it so it was easy. The bookmark is already there.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, keep it.
Okay.
Canto 1, chapter 8.
42.
42.
Found it? Hi, Hare Krishna. Welcome to ISKCON Dublin. Today is Friday. We're continuing reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Today is the third day of reading. We'll also do tomorrow. Before that, we will recite Srimad Bhagavatam Mahima Stotra. There's only one copy there, unfortunately.
But you can take picture.
We have one
You
there.
can take picture of it.
So we have one there. No,
No,
it's the verses, a glorification of Bhagavatam. Anyway, I'll just recite. You just listen. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha, Sarva Vidaika Satvara, Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya, Sarva Lokaika Drukpada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of all of the precious gems of all conclusive truths. You are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Pranam, Srimad Bhagavatam, Kalitvanto Ditya, Sri Krishna Parivartitam. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Patnaya, Prema Vakshaksharayate, Sarvanda Sarvasivyaya, Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Madhika Matsangin Madguru Madmahadana Manishtaraka Madbhagya Madananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadata adayin atini chochataraka hana munchakada chinman premna hritkantayos puram. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So we are starting reading now these first invocation verses. Lionel, it's there back to the bookmark. We're starting from 42. So we are just now in the middle of the verses where Queen Kuti is offering prayers to Lord Krishna, who is departing to Dwarka. So it's 42. That's the end of this segment of verses, and we are slowly going to finish this chapter and starting the next chapter today, it looks like. So let's start. Everyone there? Hare Krishna. Welcome. Hare Krishna. Dvaime nanya vishaya matir madhupate sakrit ratim udva harat ada gange vaugam udanvati. O Lord of Madhu, as the Ganges forever flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction be constantly drawn unto you without being diverted to anyone else. Purport. Perfection of pure devotional service is attained when all attention is diverted towards the transcendental loving service of the Lord. To cut off the tie of all other affections does not mean complete negation of the final elements, like affection for someone else. This is not possible. A living being, whoever he may be, must have this feeling of affection for others, because this is a symptom of life. The symptoms of life, such as desire, anger, hankerings, feelings of attraction, etc., cannot be annihilated. Only the objective has to be changed. Desire cannot be negated, but in devotional service, the desire is changed only for the service of the Lord in place of desire for sense gratification. The so-called affection for family, society, country, etc. consists of different phases of sense gratification. When this desire is changed for the satisfaction of the Lord, it is called devotional service. In the Bhagavad Gita, we can see that Arjuna desired not to fight with his brothers and relations, just to satisfy his own personal desires. But when he heard the message of the Lord, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, he changed his decision and served the Lord. And for his doing so, he became a famous devotee of the Lord. For it is declared in all the scriptures that Arjuna attained spiritual perfection by devotional service to the Lord in friendship. The fighting was there, the friendship was there, Arjuna was there, and Krishna was there. But Arjuna became a different person by devotional service. Therefore, the prayers of Kunti also indicate the same categorical changes in activities. Srimati Kunti wanted to serve the Lord without diversion, and that was her prayer. This unalloyed devotion is the ultimate goal of life. Our attention is usually diverted to the service of something which is non-godly or not in the program of the Lord. When the program is changed into the service of the Lord, that is to say, when the senses are purified in relation with the service of the Lord, it is called pure unalloyed devotional service. Srimati Kunti Devi wanted that perfection and prayed for it from the Lord. Her affection for the Pandavas and the Vrishnis is not out of the range of devotional service, because the service of the Lord and the service of the devotees are identical. Sometimes service to the devotee is more valuable than service to the Lord. But here the affection of Kunti Devi for the Pandavas and the Vrishnis was due to family relation. This style of affection in terms of material relation is the relation of Maya, because the relations of the body or the mind are due to the influence of the external energy. Relations of the soul, established in relation with the Supreme Soul, are factual relations. When Kunti Devi wanted to cut off the family relation, she meant to cut off the relation of the skin. The skin relation is the cause of material bondage, but the relation of the soul is the cause of freedom. This relation of the soul to the soul can be established by the via medium of the relation with the Supersoul. Seeing in the darkness is not seeing. Seeing in the darkness is not seeing, but seeing by the light of the sun means to see the sun and everything else which was unseen in the darkness. That is the way of devotional service. 43. Translation. O Krishna, O friend of Arjuna, O chief amongst the descendants of Vrishni, you are the destroyer of those political parties which are disturbing elements on this earth. Your prowess never deteriorates. You are the proprietor of the transcendental abode, and you descend to relieve the distresses of the cows, the brahmanas, and the devotees. You possess all mystic powers, and you are the preceptor of the entire universe. You are the Almighty God, and I offer you my respectful obeisances. Purport. A summary of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna is made herein by Srimati Kunti Devi. The Almighty Lord has his eternal transcendental abode, where he is engaged in keeping Surabhi cows. He is served by hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune. He descends on the material world to reclaim his devotees and to annihilate the disturbing elements in groups of political parties and kings who are supposed to be in charge of administration work. He creates, maintains, and annihilates by his unlimited energies, and still he is always full with prowess and does not deteriorate in potency. The cows, the brahmanas, and the devotees of the Lord are all objects of his special attention, because they are very important factors for the general welfare of living beings. 44. So here ends prayers of Kunti Devi. Translation. Sutta Goswami said, the Lord, thus hearing the prayers of Kunti Devi, composed in choice words for his glorification, mildly smiled. That smile was as enchanting as his mystic power. Purport. Anything that is enchanting in the world is said to be a representation of the Lord. The conditioned souls who are engaged in trying to lord it over the material world are also enchanted by his mystic powers, but his devotees are enchanted in a different way by the glories of the Lord, and his merciful blessings are upon them. His energy is displayed in different ways, as electrical energy works in manifold capacities. Srimati Kunti has prayed to the Lord just to enunciate a fragment of his glories. All his devotees worship him in that way, by chosen words, and therefore the Lord is known as Uttama Shloka. No amount of chosen words is sufficient to enumerate the Lord's glory, and yet he is satisfied by such prayers, as the Father is satisfied even by the broken linguistic attempts of a growing child. The word Maya is used both in the sense of delusion and mercy. Herein the word Maya is used in the sense of Lord's mercy upon Kunti Devi. Text 45. Thus accepting the prayers of Srimati Kunti Devi, the Lord subsequently informed other ladies of his departure by entering the palace of Hastinapura. But upon preparing to leave, he was stopped by King Yudhishthira, who implored him lovingly. Purport. No one could make Lord Krishna stay at Hastinapura when he decided to start for Dwarka, but the simple request of King Yudhishthira that the Lord remain there for a few days more was immediately effective. This signifies that the power of King Yudhishthira was loving affection, which the Lord could not deny. The Almighty God is thus conquered only by loving service and nothing else. He is fully independent in all his dealings, but he voluntarily accepts obligations by the loving affection of his pure devotees. 46. King Yudhishthira, who was much aggrieved, could not be convinced, despite instructions by great sages headed by Vyasa and the Lord Krishna himself, the performer of superhuman feats, and despite all historical evidence. Purport. The pious King Yudhishthira was mortified because of the mass massacre of human beings in the battle of Kurukshetra, especially on his account. Duryodhana was there on the throne, and he was doing well in his administration, and in one sense there was no need of fighting. But on the principle of justice, Yudhishthira was to replace him. The whole clique of politics centered around this point, and all the kings and residents of the whole world became involved in this fight between the rival brothers. Lord Krishna was also there on the side of King Yudhishthira. It is said in Mahabharata, Adiparva 20, that 640 million men were killed in the 18 days of the battle of Kurukshetra, and some hundreds of thousands were missing. Practically, this was the greatest battle in the world within 5,000 years. This mass killing simply to enthrone Maharaj Yudhishthira was too mortifying, so he tried to be convinced with evidences from histories by great sages like Vyasa and the Lord himself that the fight was just because the cause was just. But Maharaj Yudhishthira would not be satisfied, even though he was instructed by the greatest personalities of the time. Krishna is designated herein as the performer of superhuman actions, but in this particular instance, neither he nor Vyasa could convince King Yudhishthira. Does it mean that he failed to be a superhuman actor? No, certainly not. The interpretation is that the Lord is as Ishvara, or the supersoul in the hearts of both King Yudhishthira and Vyasa, performs still more superhuman action because the Lord desired it. As supersoul of King Yudhishthira, he did not allow the king to be convinced by the words of Vyasa and others, including himself, because he desired that the king hear instructions from the dying Bhishmadeva, who was another great devotee of the Lord. The Lord wanted that at the last stage of his material existence, the great warrior Bhishmadeva see him personally and see his beloved grandchildren, King Yudhishthira, etc., now situated on the throne, and thus pass away very peacefully. Bhishmadeva was not at all satisfied to fight against the Pandavas, who were his beloved fatherless grandchildren. But the Kshatriyas are also very stern people, and therefore he was obliged to take the side of the Yodhana, because he was maintained at the expense of the Yodhana. Besides this, the Lord also desired that King Yudhishthira be pacified by the words of Bhishmadeva, so that the world could see that Bhishmadeva excelled all in knowledge, including the Lord himself. 47. King Yudhishthira, son of Dharma, overwhelmed by the death of his friends, was aggrieved just like a common materialistic man. O sages, thus deluded by affection, he began to speak. Purport. King Yudhishthira, though he was not expected to become aggrieved like a common man, became deluded by worldly affection by the will of the Lord, just as Arjuna was apparently deluded. A man who sees knows well that the living entity is neither the body nor the mind, but is transcendental to the material conception of life. The common man thinks of violence and non-violence in terms of the body, but that is a kind of delusion. Everyone is duty-bound according to one's occupational duties. A kshatriya is bound to fight for the right cause, regardless of the opposite party. In such discharge of duty, one should not be disturbed by the annihilation of the material body, which is only an external dress of the living soul. All this was perfectly known to Maharaj Yudhishthira, but by the will of the Lord he became just like a common man, because there was another great idea behind this delusion. The king would be instructed by Bhishma, as Arjuna was instructed by the Lord himself. 48. King Yudhishthira said, O my Lord, I am the most sinful man. Just see my heart, which is full of ignorance. This body, which is ultimately meant for others, has killed many, many phalanxes of men. Purport. A solid phalanx of 21,870 chariots, 21,870 elephants, 109,650 infantry, and 65,600 cavalry is called an Akshauhini. And many Akshauhinis were killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Maharaj Yudhishthira, as the most pious king of the world, takes for himself the responsibility for killing such a huge number of living beings, because the battle was fought to reinstate him on the throne. This body is, after all, meant for others. While there is life in the body, it is meant for the service of others, and when it is dead, it is meant to be eaten by dogs and jackals or maggots. He is sorry because for such a temporary body, such a huge massacre was committed. Page 49. I have killed many boys, brahmanas, well-wishers, friends, parents, preceptors, and brothers. Though I live millions of years, I will not be relieved from the hell that awaits me for all these sins. Purport. Whenever there is a war, there is certainly a massacre of many innocent living beings, such as boys, brahmanas, and women, whose killing is considered to be the greatest of sins. They are all innocent creatures, and in all circumstances, killing of them is forbidden in the scriptures. Maharaj Yudhishthira was aware of these mass killings. Similarly, there were friends, parents, and preceptors also on both sides, and all of them were killed. It was simply horrible for him to think of such killing, and therefore he was thinking of residing in hell for millions and billions of years. 50. There is no sin for a king who kills for the right cause, who is engaged in maintaining his citizens, but this injunction is not applicable to me. Purport. Maharaj Yudhishthira thought that although he was not actually involved in the administration of the kingdom, which was being carried on well by the Yodhana, without harm to the citizens, he caused the killing of so many living beings only for his personal gain of the kingdom from the hands of the Yodhana. The killing was committed not in the course of administration, but for the sake of self-aggrandizement, and as such he thought himself responsible for all the sins. 51. I have killed many friends of women, and have thus caused enmity to such an extent that it is not possible to undo it with material welfare work. Purport. The Grihamedis are those whose only business is to perform a welfare work for the sake of material prosperity. Such material prosperity is sometimes hampered by sinful activities, for the materialist is sure to commit sins, even unintentionally, in the course of discharging material duties. To get relief from such sinful reactions, the Vedas prescribed several kinds of sacrifices. It is said in the Vedas that by performing the Ashwamedha Yagya, horse sacrifice, one can get relief from even Brahma Hatya, killing of a Brahmana. Yudhishthira Maharaj performed this Ashwamedha Yagya, but he thinks that even by performing such yagyas, it is not possible to get relief from the great sins committed. In war, either the husband or the brother or even the father or sons go to fight, and when they are killed, a fresh enmity is created, and thus a chain of actions and reactions increases, which is not possible to be counteracted even by thousands of Ashwamedha Yagyas. The way of work, karma, is like that. It creates one action and another reaction simultaneously, and thus increases the chain of material activities, binding the performer in material bondage. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:27-28, the remedy is suggested that such actions and reactions on the path of work can be checked only when work is done on behalf of the Supreme Lord. The battle of Kurukshetra was actually fought by the will of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, as it is evident from his version, and only by his will was Yudhishthira placed on the throne at Hastinapur. Therefore, factually no sin whatsoever touched the Pandavas, who were only the order carriers of the Lord. For others, who declare war out of personal interest, the whole responsibility lies on them. Text 52. As it is not possible to filter muddy water through mud, or purify a wine-stained pot with wine, it is not possible to counteract the killing of men by sacrificing animals. Purport. Ashwamedha Yagyas or Gomedha Yagyas, sacrifices in which a horse or a bull is sacrificed, were not, of course, for the purpose of killing the animals. Lord Chaitanya said that such animals sacrificed on the altar of Yagya were rejuvenated and a new life was given to them. It was just to prove the efficacy of the hymns of the Vedas. By recitation of the hymns of the Vedas in the proper way, certainly the performer gets relief from the reactions of sins. But in case of such sacrifices improperly done, under inexpert management, surely one has to become responsible for animal sacrifice. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, there is no possibility of performing the yagyas perfectly for want of expert brahmanas who are able to conduct such yagyas. Maharaj Yudhishthira therefore gives a hint to performing sacrifices in the age of Kali. In the Kali Yuga, the only sacrifice recommended is the performance of Harinama Yagya, inaugurated by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But one should not indulge in animal killing and counteract it by performing the Harinama Yagya. Those who are devotees of the Lord never kill an animal for self-interest, and, as the Lord ordered Arjuna, they do not refrain from performing the duty of Kshatriya. The whole purpose, therefore, is served when everything is done for the will of the Lord. This is possible only for the devotees. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 8th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Prayers by Queen Kunti and Parikshit Saved. They're performed all around. They are not, it doesn't have efficacy or efficiency. They're not efficient anymore in this age because of there are no more expert brahmanas. They are brahmanas, of course, but brahmanas who can properly chant and are properly trained, they don't exist. And this is declared by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all the acharyas, because also for this age in the scriptures has the only yagya that has the efficacy, efficiency is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. So that's also what we're trying to do here. we read the Bhagavatam, we read the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and at the same time we chant personally. On our personal sadhana is for all followers of ISKCON and all Vaishnavas is chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra and Kirtan, so chanting the holy name together, which can be done anytime here, or we especially do it on Tuesdays, 6:30. We come together for 2 hours and chant. And on Sundays as well. Hare Krishna, welcome. We do it also.
I've actually cut my hands, so I don't want to sit inside. Can I?
Yeah,
Yes,
feel free.
Consider
The way it is.
come and touch them.
The important thing is, I don't know, go and see the Lord. I think it's-
Yeah, could you just sit outside?
Yeah.
If you could just give me the.
Oh.
Sorry, you can cross.
Yeah, I'll just get
So another thing, we will be conducting the reading of the whole 700 verses of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, because this week was Gita Jayanti on Tuesday by our time, and we chanted, we recited all 700 verses this Tuesday, but probably everyone was at work or at school, so we'll do it this weekend for everyone else who wants to be part of this yagya. We will start 8 in the morning and we'll try to finish by 12. So we'll go throughout all the verses, Sanskrit and English. So everyone welcome here. We'll also do it online for everyone else who won't be able to come. So by that note, I will now continue to next chapter, 9th chapter of Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, called The Passing Away of Bhishma Deva in the Presence of Lord Krishna. So text number 1. Sutta Goswami said, being afraid for having killed so many subjects on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Maharaj Yudhishthira went to the scene of the massacre. There Bhishma Deva was lying on a bed of arrows, about to pass away. Purport. In this 9th chapter, as it will be willed by Lord Sri Krishna, Bhishma Deva will impart instructions to King Yudhishthira on the subject of occupational duties. Bhishma Deva will also offer his last prayer to the Lord on the verge of passing away from this mortal world, and thus become liberated from the bondage of further material engagements. Bhishma Deva was endowed with the power of leaving his material body at will, and his lying down on the bed of arrows was his own choice. This passing away of the great warrior attracted the attention of all the contemporary elites, and all of them assembled there to show their feelings of love, respect, and affection for the great soul. 2. At that time, all his brothers followed him on beautiful chariots drawn by first-class horses, decorated with gold ornaments. With them were Vyasa and rishis like Domya, the learned priest of the Pandavas, and others. 3. O sage amongst the Brahmanas, Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, also followed, seated on a chariot with Arjuna. Thus King Yudhishthira appeared very aristocratic, like Kuvera surrounded by his companions, the Guhyakas. Purport. Lord Sri Krishna wanted the Pandavas to be present before Bhishma Deva in the most aristocratic order, so that he might be pleased to see them happy at the time of his death. Kuvera is the richest of all the demigods, and herein King Yudhishthira appeared like him, Kuvera, for the procession along with Sri Krishna was quite appropriate to the royalty of King Yudhishthira. Text number 4. Seeing him, Bhishma, lying on the ground like a demigod fallen from the sky, the Pandava king Yudhishthira, along with his younger brothers and Lord Krishna, bowed down before him. Purport. Lord Krishna was also a younger cousin of Maharaj Yudhishthira, as well as the intimate friend of Arjuna. But all the family members of the Pandavas knew Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord, although conscious of his supreme position, always behaved in a humanly custom, and so he also bowed down before the dying Bhishmadeva, as if he were one of the younger brothers of King Yudhishthira. 5. Just to see the chief of the descendants of King Bharata, Bhishma, all the great souls in the universe, namely the rishis amongst the demigods, brahmanas and kings, all situated in the quality of goodness, were assembled there. Perfect. The rishis are those who have attained perfection by spiritual achievements. Such spiritual achievements can be earned by all, whether one is a king or a mendicant. Bhishmadeva himself was also one of the Brahma rishis and the chief of the descendants of King Bharata. All rishis are situated in the quality of goodness. All of them assembled there on hearing the news of the great warrior's impending death. Text number 6 and 7. All the sages like Parvata Muni, Narada, Daumya, Vyasa, the incarnation of God, Brihadarshva, Bharadvaja, and Parashuram, and disciples, Vashishta, Indra Pramada, Trita, Grita Samada, Asita, Kakshivan, Gautama, Atri, Kaukshika, and Sudarshana were present. Purport. Now Prabhupada explains, talks about every single rishi here. Parvata Muni. Parvata Muni is considered to be one of the oldest sages. He is almost always a constant companion of Narada Muni. They are also a spaceman competent to travel in the air without the help of any material vehicle. Parvata Muni is also Deva Rishi, or a great sage amongst the demigods like Narada. He was present along with Narada at the sacrificial ceremony of Maharaj Janamejaya, son of Maharaj Parikshit. In this sacrifice, all the snakes of the world were to be killed. Parvata Muni and Narada Muni are called Gandharvas also, because they can travel in the air singing the glories of the Lord. Since they can travel in the air, they observe Draupadi's Swayamvara ceremony, selecting her own husband from the air. Like Narada Muni, Parvata Muni also used to visit the royal assembly in the heaven of King Indra. As a Gandharva, sometimes he visited the royal assembly of Kuvera, one of the important demigods. Both Narada and Parvata were once in trouble with the daughter of Maharaj Srinjaya. Maharaj Srinjaya got the benediction of a son by Parvata Muni. Narada Muni. Narada Muni is inevitably associated with the narrations of the Puranas. He is described in the Bhagavatam. In his previous life, he was the son of the maidservant, but by good association with pure devotees, he became enlightened in devotional service, and in the next life, he became a perfect man, comparable with himself only. In the Mahabharata, his name is mentioned in many places. He is the principal Devarishi, or the chief sage among the demigods. He is the son and disciple from Brahmaji, and from him the disciplic succession in the line of Brahma has been spread. He initiated Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, and many celebrated devotees of the Lord. He initiated even Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedic literatures, and from Vyasadeva, Madhvacharya was initiated, and thus the Madhva Sampradaya, in which the Gaudiya Sampradaya is also included, has spread all over the universe. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu belonged to this Madhva Sampradaya. Therefore Brahmaji, Narada, Vyasa down to Madhva, Chaitanya and the Goswamis all belong to the same line of disciplic succession. Naradaji has instructed many kings from time immemorial. In the Bhagavatam, we can see that he instructed Prahlad Maharaj while he was in the womb of his mother, and he instructed Vasudeva, father of Krishna, as well as Maharaj Yudhishthira. Daumya, a great sage who practiced severe penances at Utkochaka Tirtha and was appointed royal priest of the Pandava kings. He acted as the priest in many religious functions of the Pandavas, samskara, and also each of the Pandavas was attended by him at the betrothal of Draupadi. He was present even during the exile of the Pandavas and used to advise them in circumstances when they were perplexed. He instructed them how to live incognito for 1 year, and his instructions were strictly followed by the Pandavas during that time. His name is mentioned also when the general funeral ceremony was performed after the battle of Kurukshetra. In the Anushasana Parva of Mahabharata, he gave religious instructions very elaborately to Maharaj Yudhishthira. He was actually the right type of priest of a householder, for he could guide the Pandavas on the right path of religion. A priest is meant for guiding the householder progressively in the right path of ashrama dharma, or the occupational duty of a particular caste. There is practically no difference between the family priest and the spiritual master. The sages, saints and brahmanas were especially meant for such functions. Badarayana. That's Vyasadeva. He is known as Krishna Dvaipayana. Satyavati Sutta, Parasharya, Parasharatmaja, Badarayana, Vedavyasa, etc. He was the son of Mahamuni Parashara in the womb of Satyavati prior to her betrothal with Maharaj Shantanu, the father of the great general grandfather Bhishmadev. He is a powerful incarnation of Narayana, and he broadcasts the Vedic wisdom to the world. As such, Vyasadeva is offered respects before one chants the Vedic literature, especially the Puranas. Shukadeva Goswami was his son, and rishis like Vaishampayana were his disciples for different branches of the Vedas. He is the author of the great epic Mahabharata and the great transcendental literature Bhagavatam. The Brahma Sutras, the Vedanta Sutras, or Badarayana Sutras were compiled by him. Among sages, he is the most respected author by dint of severe penances. When he wanted to record the great epic Mahabharata for the welfare of all people in the age of Kali, he was feeling the necessity of a powerful writer who could take up his dictation. By the order of Brahmaji, Sri Ganeshaji took up the charge of noting down the dictation on the condition that Vyasadeva would not stop dictation for a moment. The Mahabharata was thus compiled by the joint endeavor of Vyasa and Ganesha. By the order of his mother, Satyavati, who was later married to Maharaj Shantanu, and by the request of Bhishmadeva, the eldest son of Maharaj Shantanu by his first wife, the Ganges, he begot 3 brilliant sons, whose names are Dhritarashtra, Pandu and Vidura. The Mahabharata was compiled by Vyasadeva after the battle of Kurukshetra and after the death of all the heroes of Mahabharata. It was first spoken in the royal assembly of Maharaj Janamejana, the son of Maharaj Parikshit. Brihadarshva, an ancient sage who used to meet Maharaj Yudhishthira now and then. First of all, he met Maharaj Yudhishthira at Kamyavana. This sage narrated the history of Maharaj Nala. There is another Brihadarshva who is the son of Ikshvaku dynasty, Brihadvaja. He is one of the 7 great rishis and was present in the time of the birth of ceremony of Arjuna. The powerful rishi sometimes undertook severe penances on the shore of the Ganges, and his ashram is still celebrated at Prayagadam. It is learned that this rishi, while taking bath in the Ganges, happened to meet Grihtachi, one of the beautiful society girls of heaven, and thus he discharged semen, which was kept and preserved in an earthen pot, and from which Drona was born. So Dronacharya is the son of Bharadvaja Muni. Others say that Bharadvaja, the father of Drona, is a different person from Maharaj Bharadvaja. He was a great devotee of Brahma. Once he approached Dronacharya and requested him to stop the battle of Kurukshetra. Parashurama, or Renukasuta. He is the son of Maharshi Jamadagni and Srimati Renuka. Thus he is also known as Renukasuta. He is one of the powerful incarnations of God, and he killed the Kshatriya community as a whole 21 times. With the blood of the Kshatriyas, he pleased the souls of his forefathers. Later on, he underwent severe penances at the Mahendra Parvata. After taking the whole earth from the Kshatriyas, he he gave it in charity to Kashyapa Muni. Parashurama instructed the Dhanurveda, or the science of fighting, to Dronacharya because he happened to be a Brahmana. He was present during the coronation of Maharaj Yudhishthira, and he celebrated the function along with other great rishis. Parashurama is so old that he met both Rama and Krishna at different times. He fought with Rama, but he accepted Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He also praised Arjuna when he saw him with Krishna. When Bhishma refused to marry Amba, who wanted him to become her husband, Amba met Parashurama, and by her request only, he asked Bhishma Deva to accept her as his wife. Bhishma refused to obey his order, although he was one of the spiritual masters of Bhishma Deva. Parashurama fought with Bhishma Deva when Bhishma neglected his warning. Both of them fought very severely, and at last Parashurama was pleased with Bhishma and gave him the benediction of becoming the greatest fighter in the world. Vashishta. The great celebrated sage among the Brahmanas, well known as the Brahmarshi Vashishtadeva, well known as the Brahmarshi Vashishtadeva. He is a prominent figure in both the Ramayana and the Mahabharata periods. He celebrated the coronation ceremony of the personality of Godhead Sri Rama. He was present also on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He could approach all the higher and lower planets, and his name is also connected with the history of Hiranyakashipu. There was a great tension between him and Vishwamitra, who wanted his Kamadeno, wish for. Once he tried to commit suicide on account of Vishwamitra's torture, but all his attempts were unsuccessful. He jumped from a hill, but the stones on which he fell became a stack of cotton, and thus he was saved. He jumped into the ocean, but the waves washed him ashore. He jumped into the river, but the river also washed him ashore. Thus all his suicide attempts were unsuccessful. He is also one of the 7 rishis and husband of Arundhati, the famous star. Indra Pramada, another celebrated rishi. It's just a short sentence. Trita, one of the 3 sons of Prajapati Gautama. He was the 3rd son, and his other 2 brothers were known as Ekat and Dvita. All the brothers were great sages and strict followers of the principles of religion. By dint of severe penances, they were promoted to Brahmaloka, the planet where Brahmaji lives. Once Trita Muni fell into a well. He was an organizing worker of many sacrifices, and as one of the great sages, he also came to show respect to Bhishmaji at his deathbed. He was one of the 7 sages in the Varuna Loka. He hailed from the western countries of the world. As such, most probably he belonged to the European countries. At that time, the whole world was under one Vedic culture. That's interesting. Grita Samada, one of the sages of the heavenly kingdom. He was a close friend of Indra, the king of heaven, and was as great as Brihaspati. He used to visit the royal assembly of Maharaj Yudhishthira, and he also visited the place where Bhishmadeva breathed his last. Sometimes he explained the glories of Lord Shiva before Maharaj Yudhishthira. He was the son of Vitahavya, and he resembled in features the body of Indra. Sometimes the enemies of Indra mistook him to be Indra and arrested him. He was a great scholar of the Rig Veda, and thus he was highly respected by the Brahmana community. He lived a life of celibacy and was powerful in every respect. Asita. There was a king of the same name, but herein the Asita mentioned is the Asita Devala Rishi, a great powerful sage of the time. He explained to his father 1,500,000 verses from the Mahabharata. He was one of the members in the snake sacrifice of Maharaj Janamejaya. He was also present during the coronation ceremony of Maharaj Yudhishthira along with other great rishis. He also gave Maharaj Yudhishthira instructions while he was on the Agyana hill. He was also one of the devotees of Lord Shiva. Kakshivan. one of the sons of Gautama Muni and the father of the great sage Chandra Kaushika. He was one of the members of the parliament of Maharaj Yudhishthira. Atri. Atri Muni was a great Brahmana sage and was one of the mental sons of Brahmaji. Brahmaji is so powerful that simply by thinking of a son, he can have it. These sons are known as Manasaputras. Out of 7 Manasaputras of Brahmaji and out of the 7 great Brahmana sages, Atri was one. In his family, the great Prachetas were also born. Atri Muni had 2 Kshatriya sons who became kings. King Artama is one of them. He is counted as one of the 21 Prajapatis. His wife's name was Anusuya, and he helped Maharaj Parikshit in his great sacrifices. A few more. Kaushika, one of the permanent Rishi members in the royal assembly of Maharaj Yudhishthira. He sometimes met Lord Krishna. There are several other sages of the same name. Sudarshana. That's the last. This will, which is accepted by the personality of Godhead, Vishnu or Krishna, as his personal weapon, is the most powerful weapon, greater than the Brahmastras or similar other disastrous weapons. In some of the Vedic literatures, it is said that Agnideva, the fire god, presenting this weapon to Lord Sri Krishna, but factually this weapon is eternally carried by the Lord. Agnideva presented this weapon to Krishna in the same way that Rukmini was given by Maharaj Rukma to the Lord. The Lord accepts such presentations from his devotees, even though such presentations are eternally his property. There is an elaborate description of this weapon in the Ada Parva of the Mahabharata. Lord Shri Krishna used this weapon to kill Shishupal, a rival of the Lord. He also killed Shalva by this weapon, and sometimes he wanted his friend Arjuna to use it to kill his enemy in the Mahabharata. Text number 8. Yes.
What's the name of the weapon?
Sudarshan. Number 8. And many others like Shukadeva Goswami and other purified souls, Kashyapa and Angirasa and others, all accompanied by their respective disciples, arrived there. Purport. Shukadeva Goswami, Brahmarata, the famous son and disciple of Sri Vyasadeva, who taught him first the Mahabharata and then Srimad Bhagavatam. Shukadeva Goswami recited 1,400,000 verses of the Mahabharata in the councils of the Gandharvas, Yakshas and Rakshasas, and he recited Srimad Bhagavatam for the first time in the presence of Maharaj Parikshit. He thoroughly studied all the Vedic literatures from his great father. Thus he was a completely purified soul by dint of his extensive knowledge in the principles of religion. From Mahabharata Sabha Parva, it is understood that he was also present in the royal assembly of Maharaj Yudhishthira and at the fasting of Maharaj Parikshit. As a bona fide disciple of Sri Vyasadeva, he inquired from his father very extensively about religious principles and spiritual values, and his great father also satisfied him by teaching him the yoga system by which one can attain the spiritual kingdom, the difference between fruitive work and empiric knowledge, the ways and means of attaining spiritual realization, the 4 ashramas, namely the student life, the householder's life, the retired life, and the renounced life, the sublime position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the process of seeing him eye to eye, the bona fide candidate for receiving knowledge, the consideration of the 5 elements, the unique position of intelligence, the consciousness of the material nature and the living entity, the symptoms of the self-realized soul, the working principles of the material body, the symptoms of the influential modes of nature, the tree of perpetual desire, and psychic activities. Sometimes he went to the sun planet with the permission of his father Naradaji. Description of his travel in space are given in the Shanti Parva of the Mahabharata. At last he attained the transcendental realm. He is known by different names like Araneya, Arunisutta, Vyasaki, and Vyasatmaja. Kashyapa. One of the Prajapatis, the son of Marichi and one of the son-in-law of Prajapati Daksha. He is the father of the gigantic bird Garuda, who was given elephants and tortoises as eatables. He married 13 daughters of Prajapati Daksha, and their names are Aditi, Diti, Danu, Kashta, Arishta, Surasha, Ila, Muni, Krodavasha, Tamra, Surabhi, Sarama, and Timi. He begot many children, both demigods and demons, by those wives. From his first wife, Aditi, all the 12 Adityas were born. One of them is Vamana, the incarnation of Godhead. This great sage Kashyapa was also present at the time of Arjuna's birth. He received a presentation of the whole world from Parashuram, and later on he asked Parashuram to go out of the world. His other name is Arishtanemi. He lives on the northern side of the universe. Angirasa. He is the son of Maharaj Angira and is known as Brihaspati, the priest of the demigods. It is said that Dronacharya was his partial incarnation. Shukracharya was the spiritual master of the demons, and Brihaspati challenged him. His son is Kacha, and he delivered the fire weapon first to Bharadwaja Muni. He begot 6 sons, like the fire god, by his wife Chandramasi, one of the reputed stars. He could travel in space, and therefore he could present himself even in the planets of Brahmaloka and Indraloka. He advised the king of heaven. Once he cursed Indra, who thus had to become a hawk on the earth and was unwilling to return to heaven. Such is the power of the attraction of the illusory energy. Even a hawk does not wish to part with its earthly possessions in exchange for a heavenly kingdom. He was the religious preceptor of the natives of different planets. So we'll read a few more verses. We'll finish 7:30. 9. Bhishmadeva, who was the best amongst the 8 Vasus, received and welcomed all the great and powerful rishis who were assembled there, for he knew perfectly all the religious principles according to time and place. Purport. Expert religionists know perfectly well how to adjust religious principles in terms of time and place. All the great acharyas or religious preachers or reformers of the world executed their mission by adjustment of religious principles in terms of time and place. There are different climates and situations in different parts of the world, and if one has to discharge his duties to preach the message of the Lord, he must be expert in adjusting things in terms of the time and place. Bhishmadeva was one of the 12 great authorities in preaching this cult of devotional service, and therefore he could receive and welcome all the powerful sages assembled there at his deathbed from all parts of the universe. He was certainly unable at that time to welcome and receive them physically, because he was neither at his home nor in a normal healthy condition. But he was quite fit by the activities of his sound mind, and therefore he could utter sweet words with heartly expressions, and all of them were very well received. One can perform one's duty by physical work, by minds and by words, and he knew well how to utilize them in the proper place, and therefore there was no difficulty for him to receive them, although physically unfit. Text 10. Lord Sri Krishna is situated in everyone's heart, yet he manifests his transcendental form by his internal potency. This very Lord was sitting before Bhishmadeva, and since Bhishmadeva knew of his glories, he worshipped him duly. Purport. The Lord's omnipotency is displayed by his simultaneous presence in every place. He is present always in his eternal abode, Goloka Vrindavan, and still he is present in everyone's heart, and even within every invisible atom. When he manifests his eternal transcendental form in the material world, he does so by his internal potency. The external potency, or the material energy, has nothing to do with his eternal form. All these truths were known to Sri Bhishmadeva, who worshipped him accordingly. The sons of Maharaj Pandu were sitting silently nearby, overtaken with affection for their dying grandfather. Seeing this, Bhishmadeva congratulated them with feeling. There were tears of ecstasy in his eyes, for he was overwhelmed by love and affection. Perfect. When Maharaj Pandu died, his sons were all small children, and naturally they were brought up